Yeah, and there certainly will be eyeballs on the event this weekend. I say event because it is a kind of a mishmash, a crossover of boxers versus former MMA fighters, and it should be fun, right? I'm talking about Jake Paul versus Ben Askren over the weekend. I mean, look, Jake Paul is Marmite. In fact, he's worse than Marmite. I think it's fair to say majority of people do not like him. But you know what he's doing? He's putting eyeballs on the sport. He's doing it right. I'm fully invested. He's got me in. I'm invested now because I want to see him lose. Probably won't lose, but it's a great event. Triller really are setting the tone for different types of sporting events. It's not just Ben Askren versus Jake Paul. We spoke about it. It's Steve Cunningham, former cruiserweight king, versus Frank Mir, former UFC heavyweight champion. That's crazy. We've got Regis Prograis on the card as well. What's your thoughts on Askren versus Paul?
Well, I mean, look, we know that Askren's got terrible hands when he boxes, and he's going into a boxing match for the first time, and Jake Paul behaves like a 14-year-old most of the time.
Terrible hands is an understatement. They're the worst hands I've ever seen in MMA.
But the thing is, this is sports entertainment where it's a fusion and a hybrid. In some ways, I'm a traditionalist, but in other ways, I'm not. If it works, we saw last year with Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, they dipped their feet into the water, did Triller, and it worked. 1.6 million views on pay-per-view. And I think this is a fusion, a hybrid, if you like, of sports, music, entertainment, celebrity.
I'm sold, by the way.
The new modern media.
Yeah.
It's so, I say, Regis Prograis on the card. He's a very, very fine boxer. Frank Mir crossing over into boxing. He's loved boxing since he worked with Freddie Roach at the Wildcard Gym in Los Angeles when Manny Pacquiao was at his height. I remember Frank knocking out Nogueira with a beautiful left hand that he learnt really in those days under Freddie Roach. So, I don't have any objection to it whatsoever. It gets eyeballs on the sport, that's fine. If people have objections to it, that's no issue either. I'd like to see Jake Paul get knocked out by Ben Askren as well. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen.
I think we kind of do when it comes to boxing. I think it's fair to say Jake Paul's going to knock Ben Askren out. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to then call out and say, I knocked out a former Bellator champion, a former legit UFC title contender. And he's going to sell it again. He's going to continue the sell until we fight someone serious. But look, I'm going to tune in. You're going to tune in. No doubt. We're all invested into it. And I think you made a good point about Triller in terms of what they've done to the sport. Production levels have been literally off the chain. I mean, you compare it to Carl Frampton versus Jamel Herring. We look like they fought in a tent in Dubai. Look at what we're going to see on the weekend. Completely different.
Well, it's about entertaining people. It's bringing new eyes and a new audience to the sport. And I think that's what we've been talking about with Ebony Bridges earlier, bringing new eyes to the sport. She's got a different kind of following in some ways. And I think if you can capitalise on that. Jake Paul, and as I was at the Logan Paul KSI fight, between them, they've got 50 million YouTube followers. Crazy. So you only need a fifth of those or a 5% of those people to tune in. And you've got the biggest audience boxing's had for years. So, it's a changing time, but I think it's fascinating, and I think we have to embrace it. The freak shows people are calling it the freak show. Sometimes it is a freak show, but just embrace it and see what comes out of it. Times are changing, and we're moving into the new digital era, so it's fascinating for me.
Just before we go, very quickly on this one as well, I've got a minute left there. We are seeing more of the veterans fight. Them fights come up as well. We've got Miguel Cotto versus Marquez, which is being signed. Oscar De La Hoya looks like he wants to come out of retirement and have a crack
against
as well.
An MMA fighter.
What are they all doing? What do you make of all this, very quickly?
It's absolutely fine, as far as I'm concerned. Some of them will fall, some of them will rise. Some of them are worth watching, some of them are not. If they match Oscar De La Hoya with the right person, it'll be a very, very interesting night. He looks in fine fettle, I must say.
He
looks great in all his videos.
Yeah,
great.
Looks great, in great shape. Voice there, Gareth A. Davies, thank you very, very much.